Hey everyone, welcome back to another Web Dev Junkie video. My name is Cody Seibert, and in this video, I want to show you one of the tools that I use in my day-to-day work, and also on my side projects to just kind of help me build out and plan for when we're about to implement a new feature, or kind of talk about designing a new feature in our system. So if you go to this link here, this is a open source project called JS Sequence Diagrams, where he provides you a DSL that you can type in, and that'll render out a cool little sequence diagram for you. So I use this all the time just if I need to like kind of explain a concept to people or make sure that we're all on the same page about how something is about to work. So let me just kind of walk you through an example of when I might use this. So let's say we wanted to build an online chess or checkers game, okay? So if you imagine it's a game where you load up your UI and it shows you all of the rooms that you can join, which have players waiting for an opponent. And you can also create a new room by clicking like a button or something. So you might want to click join game. That'll send an event to the server, and then the server will notify the other player that, hey, someone has joined, and then it'll kick off the game and you guys can start taking turns. So I'm going to show you the path of when you first load up the app and you try to create a new room for yourself so someone else can join. And doing something like this with a sequence diagram really helps, especially when you're on a team of people and you need to explain a concept to everyone else. So let's just go ahead and try to do this while I talk through the process, and hopefully you enjoy this. So let's take a step back. We're building a sequence diagram to explain how maybe two players in a server all talk to each other. So it's a higher level diagram of how different clients and servers talk to each other. So I'm going to name out a couple of participants. So participant player A, participant player B, and participant is a keyword here, and whatever you put after this, it basically just renders out in this little box. And then finally, we have a participant of server. So this will be our WebSocket server. So like I said, when you load up your UI, I could put a note over this. So I could say note over player A loads up UI. Okay, so in this, the sequence is basically line by line. So as I type more lines, it's going to basically put the next sequence at the next step. So the user player A loads up the UI, and then they might click on a button. So I'll say click on create room. Okay. So after the user clicks on create room, you might talk to the server. In fact, before I get to this point, I actually missed a step. So when you first open up the UI, you probably want to connect to your server with the WebSocket. So I could say player A, and then I could do arrow and point that to the server token, and I could say connect via WebSocket. And also, when you first join, the server might send back a list of all the rooms that are available. So I could just reverse this and say server arrow player A send all rooms. Okay. So let's take a step back and recap. You have a player, loads up the UI, that'll connect to the server with WebSockets, and then once the user connected, the server is going to send back a list of all the rooms the player can join. But in this case, the player decides, I don't want to join those rooms, I'm going to create my own room. So I'm going to say player A tells the server, create me a room. And then the server might send back an event saying, this is your room ID. So server to player A, your room ID. Something like that. And also the server might broadcast an event to all the other players and say, a new room was created. So if you're sitting around, you know, in the lobby waiting for someone to join, this will be really useful to know when a new room is created and you can actually play with them. So the player B I haven't really talked about, but also when they load up the UI, I'm going to just put this stuff over here, note over player B. So same deal, they load up the UI and they are going to connect to the server with a WebSocket event. So player B goes to server. Does that make sense? And we could probably do the same thing. You know, let me just move this over here so it's a little bit better. Okay, so this is the scenario where both player A and player B kind of load up their UI, connect to the server. They both get back a list of rooms. Player A decides to create his own room. The server sends back a room ID and also notifies player B that there's a new room. And now player B can say, I want to join the room. Okay. So in fact, I should probably say note over player B clicks join room button or something like that. You know what I'm saying? So basically the player B will click a button to say, I want to join the room. That'll notify the server, and the server will basically say, hey, note over server, start up game. And then the server will probably notify both the players. So server will notify player A, game has started, and also it'll notify player B that the game has started. Okay, so there's probably some stuff that I've left out, but in a nutshell, this is a great talking point. So you can take this to a meeting and kind of distribute this amongst your teammates and your other developers and kind of talk through a solution of how this sequence diagram is going to help you build out your application. And you can also use this if you want to build like a test scenario to make sure that like when this scenario happens, both the player A and player B get an event that says game has started. There's a lot you can do with this, but I think having a diagram like this really helps you be able to talk about the feature or the functionality you're about to build, and also make sure that what you're building is correct. You can also go and do a simple. It's a little bit easier to read, I think, when you do simple instead of hand-drawn. Yeah, I think one step I might have missed is the server would probably want to keep track of the player. Connect to... And I also have this kind of swapped. You need to connect before you can send all the rooms. Okay. So I don't know if I need to kind of walk you through this whole sequence diagram again, but again, this is just kind of show you one of the tools I use at work and on my own projects if I'm trying to make sure I'm implementing a feature correctly. And it's great too because you can actually like have a checkbox next to all these and you can implement this just going down the list. And once you get to this part, you can go back and say, hey, everything should be working now because I implemented all these steps. Like you can actually walk through your code and walk through your functions and walk through how your events are going between the servers and back to the players and the clients and verify that what you're doing is correct. It's pretty cool. So I really like this app. Whoever made it, I really appreciate you making this. I thank you so much for it. Looks like it was made by B-Ramp. So very awesome, very awesome. I appreciate you for making this. It's really cool. So I'm curious if you have your own tools that you like to use in your day-to-day. Be sure to leave a comment below and let us know. Also, be sure to like this video if you enjoyed watching this video of me explaining one of the tools I use in my day-to-day developing job and on my side projects as well. And then finally, be sure to subscribe if you're new to this channel and you enjoy watching content like this in terms of web development. So I guess that wraps it up. So happy coding, y'all.